Hi, Limor. Good morning to you. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you, Nicolette?
I am doing great as well. I'd like to thank you very much for saying yes to be interviewed today with me on my show. So, I'd like to give you my a formal introduction about myself. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. And before we start, my ritual would be reading a bit of introduction of all of my guests, and then we can get right into our conversation.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So, hello everyone. We have Limor Bergman Gross here with us. She has been a mentor for women in tech for over 5 years and a former director for over 20 years. She has worked in tech as an engineer, manager, and director of engineering. She has always been passionate about supporting women in tech, and she knows firsthand how it is like being a woman in a male dominated field and all the challenges women face in the tech industry. Women she worked with tell her that working with her enabled them to continuously tear down ceilings by challenging them to think bigger. They also say that she opened their eyes to an entirely new way of contributing to their careers. And these women also say that they can achieve their goals, and more in one third of the time they thought it would take them. She's now working with individuals and organizations that support women's career growth in the tech industry. Wow, welcome, Limor. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicolette, for having me.
I cannot wait to get into this conversation that teaming, whatever it is in organization. Although a bit about myself, I just left 9 to 5 and I am jumping into the space of coaching as well. So a lot for me to learn from all of my guests, including yourself. So
Wonderful. Good for
hi.
you.
So okay, before we start off, can you share with us first what was it like growing up as a Limor Bergman Gross?
What it was like growing up. So first of all, my maiden name is Bergman, so I grew up as
Ah,
Limor Bergman.
Limor Bergman. I thought so.
I was a very shy kid, very, very shy, introverted. I still am, I would say, introverted, more on the introverted side. But as a child, I remember that it was hard for me, to be in, especially in large kind of group gatherings. So I remember myself as shy, very obedient kind of kid. I think did not do any trouble, not for my parents, and was very loved by my teachers. That's pretty much I can
Mhm.
think of.
How would you say your upbringing has shaped to how you chose the path to your career before becoming a mentor or a coach?
Yeah, I think I was very close-minded about what I can do. So when I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted. And I think the way I was raised, I was kind of taught to, okay, you need to learn, get good grades, find a good profession and work. So that's what I did. I realized, okay, I'm pretty good at STEM. Computer science sounds like, programming sounds like a good profession. I just went and studied there and started working. I didn't really ask myself, what do I want? What are my passions? Those kind of things. I mean, I was just kind of like, okay, what can I learn so I can make a living and get kind of a
Bye.
decent profession? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I too was, I mean, saying myself, I was a victim of that. It's kind of harsh because my parents this is their first time becoming parents as well. So I used to say that it is because of their teaching that said, okay, you gotta get good grades and get the money and therefore make something out of yourself when you grow big, but never really ask me or set that mindset that okay, what is it that I want to do? Or even if it's a passion that somebody wants to pursue, I wanted to pursue like maybe singing or whatnot. They'd say, oh, it's not gonna, you're not gonna make it. So I don't know. I mean, I have some questions about your career, but this is just me again thinking out loud. This just came to me right now. What do how important do you think that kids nowadays growing up be asked about what is it that they want to do, and how should they discover that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends everyone which circumstances they come from. I try to encourage my kids to really think about their passions and their strength and figure things out. They don't have to know all the answers. And as we evolve, we can change. I mean, we don't
Love
have to be
that.
stagnated and just choose a profession for life. I think this is like the school system and the way that I think still
Mm-hmm.
taught this date is like, okay, get good grades, find a good profession, go to college and start working. And we don't have to choose what we do for the rest of our lives
Mm-hmm.
when we're 18 or 20 or whatever the age is that you start your kind of life. And I think that's kind of the message I would want to give to the younger generation. I mean, I think they tend to think more about themselves than maybe you and I thought. I was
Mm-hmm.
more of like, okay, who cares what I want? I mean, just we need to find a good profession and make money. I think
Mm-hmm.
the younger generation, Gen Z, I mean, they think more about what do they want, what do they like
What
doing, which is
feels
a good
good
thing.
to them,
Yeah,
right?
it's a good
Yeah.
thing, but eventually all of us, we all want independence, right? We don't want to be dependent on our parents
Yeah.
financially. So I think, yeah, think about what you want, but also think about, okay, how can I actually make a living out of that? And think about, okay, whatever I choose now can change. So I don't have to choose something for the rest of my life. I can just choose something based on where I am today and
Mm.
figure things out along the way.
Oh, I love that. I am also a believer of pivoting as and when you're at different stages of your life. Like right now, I'm also pivoting. So thank you for that, Limor, for sharing your thoughts with us. So now we're going to move into your expertise from the corporate world. What are the best strategies to manage remote teams effectively? I mean, now since COVID, this is like boom, we like it or not, we have to do remote or hybrid or yeah, or 100% remote. So what are your strategies on that?
Yeah, I think that if I had to kind of distill it to one sentence, I would say you really need to be aware and
Mm,
kind of intentional about people and building relationships. And I think it's harder to do that when you work remote than
mm,
when I used to, work in office. It was kind of a given. It was happening naturally. I didn't have to really make conscious effort to build relationship with people, right? I mean, you meet people, you talk with them, not just on work-related stuff, but you have opportunities that you don't have when you work remote. When you work remote, a lot of the work is asynchronous. And when there are synchronous kind of conversations, they are very, very, very practical, typically unrelated to work. So how do you intentionally focus on getting to know the people you work with and building relationship with them, building trust, building a relationship? And this is not easy. So I think
no.
this is kind of the focus that I would say when you work remote, you need to be more intentional about than maybe when you work in an office and it kind of happens naturally.
Can you share with us like a success story or an example of how you to build trust with, let's say, there's a startup, right? And you have this startup is in Malaysia, for example, and then I have people in the US wanting to work with me. How do I build that trust?
Yeah. I think a lot of that is related to being curious
Mhm.
and removing judgment. Those are two things, right? Curiosity minus judgment. Especially like you're describing a situation when there are two different cultures and obviously the people in
Yes.
the US are very different from you. They think differently, they operate differently. So how can you stay curious and understand them and understand where they're coming from, what is important to them, and remove as much as possible biases or any kind of judgment you have. So you may say something like, oh, this person, they are whatever. They're lazy or they're not communicating very well or whatever. How
Or
can you
they have temperament issues.
yeah, how can you try to rephrase it like or try to understand where they coming from? And this is not easy thing to do because we have to step out of our own head, the way
Hmm.
we think, the way we operate, the way we appreciate
Hmm.
kind of good work and think about the other person. What do they think? What do they appreciate? How do they work? And why do they kind of behave the way they do? And how can we bridge that? So a lot of that is trying to understand the other person and be able to be flexible and adjust depending on the person you work with.
Well, you're giving me a lot of insights right now because I've made some connections in the US through my podcasting. And of course, culturally, we're very different. Although I can speak the language, but still the way we work, or I mean, the interaction is limited to the interview, but then beyond that, it's different because you're taking the elements of upbringing or the social culture, and then the way you work. Asians and the Westerners are typically different, and
Yeah,
some of the things that when they say something, it could be harsh to the Asians, but it's actually just an everyday thing to the people that side. And then we, in the Asian side as well, we say certain things we don't really say direct because here we're more on taking care of what the other party would feel. So, wow, it's bridging the gap and removing judgment and also biases before
exactly.
getting into it.
Yeah, and so what you're basically saying is people maybe in the US compared to Malaysia can be more direct,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be potentially seen as aggressive or not respectful or
Mm-hmm.
even offensive to someone from Malaysia that is
Yes.
indirect. If that's and think about how it is people from Israel versus US versus Malaysia because we are more direct than
Oh,
American
is it?
people.
Oh,
So
is
think
it
about
so?
that. Yeah. So when
Okay, I
you,
didn't know that. I
yeah,
need to
so
work with
actually for
somebody
me
from
it's
Israel.
it's been a challenge as being a very direct person working with people in the US that for me
Really?
they are
Oh
not as
my God.
direct as I want them to be. So kind of trying to understand, okay, this is their culture and this is how when they say something to me, that's why because they believe that if they have something to say, they just say it.
Yeah.
Versus maybe in your culture, you don't really say directly and you're kind of it's very hinted. It's
Yes.
very indirect. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't know all those intricacy of Malaysian culture and how you say things without saying them verbally, right? So,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
and when
Limor,
you understand that difference, then you're not taking that personally. You're saying that's not something personal against me as Nicolette. It's just the way that they express themselves. And they don't know how to express that in the Malaysian way or Asian, if I'm more generic.
I think the higher source is speaking to me right now on how, because I have been experiencing some trouble communicating with people that side. So, okay, I will take heed of your advice. Okay, now we're gonna move into diversity and inclusion, right? Everybody talks about this these days, but implementation is not very clear cut. So, how should and how can a company build inclusive culture?
Yeah, and this is, you mentioned diversity and inclusion. Those are two very, very different things, different words, but very, very different, in action. Diversity, and I think most organizations, I'm not saying all, but many, they try to kind of hit the diversity box. They're saying, okay, we need to hire X percent of women, X percent of people of color, and so forth. And they say, oh, if we check those boxes, we're good. But it's
Mm,
actually just the starting point. So I think, yes, diversity is very important, not just of gender or race, but in general, people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and so forth, because it brings also diversity of opinions and thoughts and create a place that is kind of more productive and open-minded
mm,
than people that are all thinking the same. So they're more limited in their point of view. It also
yeah.
creates some conflicts, though. It's
Mhm.
also, and how can you manage that wide variety of people that think differently, operate differently, but still making sure that everyone feels respected, feel heard, feel
Mm.
appreciated, and feel like they belong. And this is not an easy thing to do. I think just being aware that there are differences in people is one first step. And trying to kind of be more mindful about how different people think, how they operate, and how can you make them feel comfortable. And I'll give an example, even not related to just diversity. Let's say you have a team, and most of the team are very extroverted. Like they speak loud, they are very passionate about sharing their opinion, and you have one or two people that are very introverted. They are not feeling comfortable talking in a meeting.
Mm.
And if you're not mindful of them, naturally what will happen in a meeting, the extroverts will say everything and will
Will
kind of
conquer.
kind of take over the meeting,
Mm.
and then the introverts will not be heard. How will they make them feel? Will they feel like they belong? Probably not. Probably they will feel that no one cares about them and their opinion doesn't matter. But it's not that
Yeah.
those extroverts did something on purpose. They have just been themselves, but they have not been mindful that there are other people in the room and those people don't communicate the same way. And in order to create this inclusiveness, as you called it, you need to really think about, okay, how can I make the introvert person feel more comfortable? So maybe creating some kind of meeting culture that will allocate some slot for each person to talk. Maybe being more, initiating questions to those people and trying to kind of proactively reach out to them and ask for their opinions. Maybe finding other ways that they can express themselves. Maybe they don't feel comfortable expressing themselves in a meeting. Maybe they will feel more comfortable sharing it in an email, whatever that may be. But just thinking about that different person or personalities and how can we make them feel like they're part of the team, that they are respected, that their opinion and voice matters, even though it's harder.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you were talking, I just had flashbacks of my own experience back in my working days where, sometimes I was the introvert, sometimes I was the extrovert. So definitely resonating.
Yeah, so this is just an example, not even talking about gender. And think about when
Yeah.
you talk about genders and then there are certain kind of biases and a woman join a room full of men, which I've been many, many, many times. And then you are kind of sought as, oh, the note taker, kind of like the secretary, for example, or maybe you say something and people don't really treat what you say very seriously, and then someone else repeat the same thing called
I said, oh
mansplaining,
yeah, yeah.
and it's actually what you said. So there are a lot of things that all of them are happening because of different biases that we have
Mm,
that we may not even be aware of, right? This is what is called kind of unconscious bias. A lot of times, like people have this bias, maybe this person, because of how they think about, let's say, someone with some disability. Let's say person in your team stutter, okay? They don't
mm,
speak fluently. And you may have a bias. I'm not saying you or someone have a bias unconsciously that because that person is not speaking very clear, not fluent, stutter a lot, maybe they're stupid,
mm,
and then they may just dismiss whatever that person is saying. And that person that already is very difficult for them, very uncomfortable to talk,
mm.
will shut down immediately. So just being aware of, okay, this person is different. Maybe they have a disability. Maybe just they express themselves differently. And how can I make sure that they feel comfortable? I actually had, like in one of the groups, I love running like women ERG groups. And in one of my ERG groups, I had a woman who said she had, I don't remember exactly how it was called, but she said to me personally, she sent an email, hey, I feel uncomfortable speaking. I have some, some whatever disability. But I try to kind of accommodate her and say, hey, could you write in the chat? And eventually she was even willing to speak a little bit, less than others, but still, but just giving her the space to express herself in a way that makes her feel more comfortable, and just the way that I was approaching it, that I actually care that she shares something in a way that will accommodate her. So those things really make a huge difference.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think it is, it is not like a woo-woo thing, but it's actually really, really critical at this point. Although we hope that the changes will be implemented faster, but I think that scale is tipping towards that direction where, okay, a lot more people are really picking up the noise that, okay, this needs to be put at least, I would say, maybe forefront, yeah, of the company's agenda or direction where they're gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you. I mean, I personally, coming from corporate, I still feel that there's a lot that needs to be done. But speaking to you and what I've heard online through LinkedIn, I've been reading as well, the needle is moving. So fingers crossed. Okay, so now we're gonna move into personal branding on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Limor. So can you share 5 tips with people, including myself, for those that want to build their personal brand on LinkedIn?
I think, first of all, I would say it's a constant effort. I mean, it's a constant effort and it's not a one-time thing. It's not an online resume. Maybe it used to be in the past, right? People just updated their profile once and then, okay, just it will work for me. It doesn't work that way anymore. In order to stand out, you need to be present. But before you do that, you need to make sure your profile reflects you properly. So I think it depends if you're a business owner or if you're an employee. And with women that I coach, that I help on LinkedIn, I usually ask them, what would you like if someone land on your profile and spend 5 seconds, this is like the average 5-6 seconds that someone will kind of look at your profile. What do you want them to know about you? And then based on that, kind of have to figure out, okay, how do I make it super, super clear? And the most important thing in the profile is actually just your profile picture, headline, and the background picture. That's like the most important thing, because this is the first thing that people see when they land on your profile. They don't go and scroll and read all the stuff. Some of them do, but most people, they just see that. How can you distill your essence, who you are, what you do, just in those? Make sure your profile picture is up to date, right? I try to replace it every, I don't know, 1 to 2 years, just to make sure it's recent, it's updated, it looks like me, and not like who I was maybe 10 years ago. I'm aging. That's fine. I mean, I want to make sure that someone who speaks with me, oh,
You are
actually,
who you say you
you're
are.
the same person, rather
Yeah.
than, oh, well, she looks very. And it happened to me multiple times, I kid you not, that I talk with someone, that not necessarily just a client, and their LinkedIn and I say, is it the same person? It doesn't look even, because maybe they changed their hairstyle, maybe they kind of matured over years, and then they have a picture from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it doesn't look like them anymore. So make sure your picture reflects who you are. You don't have to do it professionally, although for any business owner, definitely I would recommend take
Getting
a
headshot.
professional, get a headshot, invest in yourself. It's not a huge investment.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself. It will be worthwhile. Always like to have updated headshots and use them like both on LinkedIn, but also like if I create posts and so forth. So it's always better. Think about your headline. What should it include? Sometimes it's, if you're an employee, you may want to think about the next job and what do you want to highlight to kind of draw opportunities to you that maybe, you're not doing today. So don't limit yourself just by your current job title. This is a common mistake that people do. They just say, oh, I am YZ, but you can do other things. So highlight your skills, highlight, the things that you can do so you can attract people to your profile. If you're a business owner, highlight what problems do you solve and for who. Make it super clear. The messaging need to be clear. So 5-6 seconds, I land on your profile, I know who you are and what you do, and whether you are a fit for what I'm looking for as an employee, or you can help me solve my problem if you're a business owner.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the highlight, what I would
Thank
recommend
you.
putting the focus on.
I will get on to working on my headlines. What do you call that? That picture, that cover page.
The background. Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I constantly update it, and because
Okay.
I try all the time to think about, okay, how can I message things even more clear?
And it's okay, right?
It's okay because
Yeah.
you're changing all the time. So don't just put that
it's so true.
statically, change it. And obviously, I mean, as I said at the beginning, you really have to be there, be present on LinkedIn, follow people that are relevant for you, comment, be engaged, and obviously post or repost at least. You don't have to write your own content if you don't want to. Some people say, I don't want to post content, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to, obviously, I'm not pushing anyone to do something they don't feel comfortable with. Although ideally you would like to post your own content, but even if you don't feel comfortable, just share an article you read and it's interesting. Repost someone else's post that you like. Comment. Those things, I mean, can really help build the network and help you be seen.
Be seen. Yeah, I think the key is be seen, and the content that you post will sort of like align to how people are viewing you, how they're viewing you as. Yeah, thank you for that, Limor. So, okay, how should one structure, if I have my own business organization in the future, how do I structure or restructure my organization? What are the important things to consider?
If you have your own business, how to structure it?
Say I'm the CEO.
I think it depends on where the business is at and what do you need the most.
Okay.
And think about what skills do I need the most and bring those people.
The critical ones.
Yeah, what are the things that are critical for me, especially if you're starting out? What are the skills? Let's say, for example, if you're a CEO and you're very technical, a lot of times, right? The founders are very, very technical people, but they don't have communication skills. They're not good in selling or marketing and so forth, for example. So they may need someone that is good in selling or communicating, and maybe they're not so good with operational stuff. So think about, okay, what kind of aspect of the business I'm not really good at, and also maybe I don't want to do, and bring someone better. this is, by the way, one of the challenges with, founders. A lot of times they come with some ego. Ego is not a bad thing, but it's bad when it's hurting you. Come with the ego,
Yeah.
oh, I have to be the best.
Or it's costing your organization.
Yeah, I have to be the best at everything. No one is best
Yeah.
at everything. And as you grow your organization, you have to think about what areas maybe that's not where I want to put my focus. Maybe I'm not the best at that, and I want to bring others that are better than me. And this is like, for example, when I was working as an employee, I constantly thought about, okay, what skills do I need? And I brought managers that were better than me in different aspects. And I was totally fine with that because they needed to do stuff that I didn't want to do, or I felt like maybe that's not the best use of my time. So I
Yeah.
think this is something that can be a little bit hard for people to realize that, oh, I need to bring someone that is better than me in some aspects.
My ego is like,
And
yeah.
my ego is being hurt.
Mm.
And how do I live with that? How am I,
How am I
be-
facing
being able to face
people?
that? Yeah.
Okay. Right. So taking one for the team. I mean, Steve Jobs said it, like he employed people who are smarter than him so that he can focus on better things to, propel his business. So yeah, definitely something that we should take heed on. So Limor, what work are you most proud of
I
today?
think that every woman that I'm able to help create incredible sense of joy and fulfillment for me because I'm able to fulfill my mission. My mission is to help more women get to executive roles in tech. So every woman that I'm able to, even the small shift in her mindset is a great win for me.
So what are you working on presently?
I'm very busy with my podcast. So I have a podcast called From a Woman to a Leader. So that's
I
something.
saw
So that's,
Philip.
yeah, and that's occupying a lot of my time and energy. And I also am building, as I said on LinkedIn, I constantly want to improve my messaging, my offering, so I can be clearer, both to myself and to people that land my profile and who I can help.
Wow. Thank you. Definitely an advice from me as well today. So, Limor, what is next for you?
What is next for me? I have a couple of women ERGs that I'm working with. So this is another kind of joy that I found. And, when I started my coaching business, I wasn't really thinking about running ERG groups, or facilitating like women ERGs. And it kind of happened. And I'm really, really happy about that. So I have upcoming women ERG groups that I'm going to facilitate. Each one is different and very excited about it.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay. I mean, I think we're speaking the same language. I have also something that I would love to set up. I mean, in my head, I got so many things, but then it's only one man show right now for me. So hearing coaches saying that they're setting this workshops and whatnot makes me feel like, okay, I can do this. Because sometimes when you're in, especially at least for me, when you're just entering something new, it can be very scary. It's a new territory. So me talking to people actually is like kind of like, okay, I need to see how they're doing it, like some motivation as well. So yeah. Okay, so Limor, we're gonna pivot to a self-worth question because my podcast talks a lot about self-worth. So I have a question for every guest. So the question for you today is, how do you personally define self-worth, and what practices or habits have you found effective in maintaining a healthy sense of it?
Great question. So first of all, I think that I define self-worth as something that is within you and not dependent on external validations. So think about it. If you are appreciating you, loving yourself, appreciating what value you bring to whoever, to the world. And if someone gives you some criticism, it doesn't break you. If someone gives you praises, it doesn't shoot you to the moon. It means that you're grounded. It means that you know who you are and you don't need external validations. And I think with people that maybe don't appreciate themselves enough or struggle with self-worth, every kind of external thing that happens, again, both positive and negative, can really impact them. So if you rely all the time on getting compliments, assurances, from others, it may mean that you need to work on your self-worth. All of us like to get positive kind of affirmations and reaction from what we do, and I love that as well. I love also to get criticism, and it's not always pleasing to hear criticism, but it doesn't break me. It means, okay, either what I've done, I need to improve, or maybe what I've done was not a best fit for me, and I shouldn't do it again. But it doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean I'm like completely worthless. So I would say this is like, for me, a good indication that you appreciate yourself and
Sense.
your own worth. And for me, the way to do it, first of all, is constantly evolving and learning. So I learn a lot, I do a lot, and I experiment a lot with things I've never done before. I constantly get out of my comfort zone. So you mentioned workshops. I think over the past year or two, I've done so many workshops on so many different topics. And not
Mhm.
all of them was as successful as the others. Some I've done only once, some I've done multiple times. But I think it helps me with understanding, wow, I can actually do all those things. And I have more to give to others. Maybe some, well, maybe not the most successful experiences, but at least I learned, oh, okay, I learned from that maybe that's not for me or not for me right now.
Mhm.
And I think the last thing I would say, physical activity. Maybe not what you expected to hear, but being active physically helps me with my well-being, self-love, and appreciation for myself and investing in myself. So I always encourage people to be active physically, to take care of their own health. And I
I
think
love
this is
that.
the main things, yeah, for me.
And nutrition as well. I
Yeah,
know your food is super healthy.
I'm not super
I
healthy
mean,
and it fluctuates over
I mean,
time.
I, I mean, your food, the food in Malaysia. Oh my gosh, we're like, and if you want to go towards the organic side, of course, it's slightly more expensive. And we love our, fried and our thing, but still, I love Malaysia. So
Yeah.
I think it's a balance.
It's a balance, and you cannot just be completely, at least I don't think you should be completely kind of on one side of the spectrum, right? Should completely like only eat healthy stuff. We all need to indulge. So I think it's a balance. I'm vegan,
Mhm.
by the way. I'm vegan for the past over 7 years. So I believe
Wow.
that we're not meant to, animals are not meant for us. I mean, I think that maybe before the Industrial Revolution, maybe, when people were just raising their own chickens or cows, it was sustainable. But
Mm-mm.
getting into this industry, I feel like that those animals, no one should suffer on my
Mhm.
account. I just feel better. I'm not preaching to veganism. My whole family is not vegan other than myself, but I do feel better than, for me, that
For
I'm,
you,
yeah, that
yeah,
I'm just eating what Mother Nature gave us. Like, I'm eating plants, plant-based food, and I don't need any animal to live and be slaughtered for me, for food to get to my plate.
yeah. I I totally get that. I also, so for me, I tried to have at least 3 times in a week to move towards the plant-based diet, and not, again, not preaching to becoming a vegan, why everybody should follow this or whatnot, but it's just, to me, I've seen the effect on my health, and I love that. And I think slowly over the years it is something that I would want to consider more seriously, but at this point, at least I've experienced the effect and I feel better. So
Yeah,
yeah.
good for you. Yeah, and I said I don't preach, I lead by example. So, for example, my kids, my family as a whole, like, they eat a lot of tofu. Like, I don't force, like, my son, one of my kids don't like tofu, but other than that, all of them are accustomed to it, they like it, and we eat, for example, tofu. I mean, because I cook for myself, so they say, oh, it's actually not that bad. So they did, so I expose them to other things, but eventually
Hmm.
it's their choice whether they want to be vegan or not. I'm not forcing anyone. I don't see myself as, that's not my job. I just need to lead by example, and hopefully other people will follow. I think that you don't have to be fully vegan, but I think reducing the consumption of meat and dairy, not just good for your health, but good for the climate changes,
Yeah.
for the environment, for the planet.
It's a ripple effect. What is your heart's greatest wish, Limor?
My wish?
Your heart's greatest wish.
I think that personally, I just want to live happy and fulfilling life. So hopefully I will be able to give to others and help others till the day I die. I really don't consider what I do right now as work. So I'm hoping that I will be able to fulfill my mission for many more years to come and make an impact. I want to see more women thrive and get to executive roles. So anything that I can do to move the needle in that direction, I will feel super grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
A mantra. I mean, I think that there is one saying that I think it's a quote also on my WhatsApp that Henry Ford said,
Ooh, ooh.
whether
I think
you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
you're right.
And I think, someone told me, oh, how can you quote Henry Ford? He was just, he was very chauvinist and all that, but it's like I'm not looking at what Henry Ford was. I just like that quote, and I really believe in it. I mean, our mind determines what we do and what we allow ourselves, and that's what I try to do with my coaching, right? I mean, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right.
You are
So if
totally correct.
so if we think that we cannot do something, probably we won't be doing that because we don't allow ourselves. So that's my mantra.
I love that. Do you have anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
Well, right now, what keeps me up at night is jet lag. I just got back from the US.
Yesterday, was it? Or just a few days
I
back?
got back actually, today's Tuesday. I got back on Friday. It's brutal for
Oh,
me. The jet lag when traveling east for me is brutal. When I travel
really?
west, not so bad.
Nothing.
Not nothing, but close to
Going back
nothing.
to your side.
So
Going back
basically
to
if I travel west, so think about it. If I travel
uh-huh.
from here to US, from Israel to US, so I travel west, well, I may wake up early a day or two, like at 5, 6 a.m., but I still sleep, good night's sleep, not that bad. When I travel east, so in that example from from US to Israel, it takes me several days. I'm just not sleeping very well. I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm
Mm,
not able to fall asleep,
mm.
even though I'm exhausted. So
Wow.
it takes me a few days. I mean, what can I do? And I think that with age, it becoming a little bit worse,
More
to be
prevalent,
honest.
yeah.
Age probably doesn't help in that account, but that's okay. Accepting that and trying to give myself the time to recover.
I'm about to make my first long haul flight to the US next month. So I mean I've been
Oh,
hearing people
that's
saying,
exciting.
yeah, it is. So I mean the flight would be around, let me see, at least 14 hours.
Wow,
So
that's a long flight. And where in the
it is.
US are you traveling to?
California.
California, okay.
Yeah. So fingers crossed. I don't know how it's gonna be. If I think that it's gonna be all right, it's gonna be all right.
It's gonna be all right. I traveled to the US many times, and one of the times I was pregnant with twins, and I was in my 6 month pregnancy, and I
No.
travel from Israel to California, which is pretty much
Ah.
similar to what you say. It's not one direct flight, but two flights.
Yeah, two flights. This one's two
Yeah,
flights too. But I mean, it's 23 in total. So
yeah. Almost, also for me, it was almost one day of travel, and I survived. So it's like it's okay. You'll be okay.
I'll make it.
Yeah, you'll make it.
Thank you, Limor. Okay, so if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Whoa. Actually, I had a coaching session like with a coach. I was a coachee,
Uh,
and based on what I was telling her, she said something that I really liked about what I do. Right? I mean, I'll say that to the audience. You have the power to choose. Any situation that you have in life, even if it seems helpless, hopeless, you still have the power to choose, and that's what I help, women to. Even if they think that they don't have any options, usually they have options. It's all about making the right choices.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Whew. Okay, so yeah, I'd like to echo on that. It's like the choice, the immediate choice that you have after that may not be the one choice that would lead to the solution, but as long as you take that first step, choosing to take that first step could, uncover more doors or open more doors for you to change your situation.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that it's easy. Usually it's not.
Yes, yes, yeah, and that's why they need coaches like yourself. Okay, Limor, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so I think the best would be to look me up, Limor Bergman Gross, on LinkedIn, and you will find me and
Mm-hmm.
follow me and listen to my podcast. And yeah, and feel free to message me as well.
Awesome. And there you have it, guys. You heard it from the person herself, Limor Bergman Gross. Before we close off, Limor, I'd like to thank you personally for the work that you're doing for the world and for advancing every step of the way, despite the challenges, creating trails that will come after you. For our listeners, this has been that one podcast with that controversial name, You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you find yourself thinking that you are worthless, you're probably not alone. But more importantly, ask yourself a level deeper. If I'm worthless, then why the heck am I here? It is because your soul have chosen to be here energetically, all the way from the ethers, and for that reason itself, you are worthy and you are enough. This has been Limor Bergman Gross, your guest of the day, and Nick Nieras, your host, signing off. Thank you so much, Limor, for your time.
Thank you so much, Nicolette, for having me.